Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. I chopped it off back then from the heavens, so of course he's still alive. Butcher and Blind walked in a line and gradually went further away. Even though their footsteps were slow, their speed was very fast. Butcher's voice came from the distance. This was the hand I exchanged my lower body for. However, the divine flesh on it seems to have been stripped off and turned into spirit pills for consumption, thus only the bones are left. Mua, remember to come back to the village to celebrate the new year. Blind's voice also came from afar. Qin Mu saw them off and gave a smile. He waved towards the shadow of their backs. I will definitely be back for New Year. Blind seemed to see him waving and raised his arms to wave back without even turning back his head. Grandpa Blind sure is powerful. Qin Mu exclaimed, to be able to see so clearly despite being so far. Not long later, a massive voice came from far away and echoed through the skies of the prairie. Junior brother Qin, Qin. Qin Mu heard that it was Chancellor Shan's voice and immediately shouted, I'm over here. That voice still continued to shout, Imperial Academician Qin, Qin. Qin Mu replied again, yet Chancellor Shan's voice was still calling out from afar, and he came to a realization, Chancellor Shan is probably still a few hundred miles away from here. His voice is able to reach here, but my voice can't reach him. Ling Yuxia woke up and immediately said, Cowherd, let me do it. When she finished saying, she waved her hand and released a flame divine out, shooting a fireball into the sky which exploded with surging heat waves. Qin Mu praised that she was clever in his heart and smiled, it's useless, he is still a few hundred miles away from here so he can't see it. Hu Linger and the Green Bull also woke up. The Green Bull looked around and couldn't find Butcher and Blind. He asked, where's old master? They've left. Qin Mu still heard Chancellor Shan shouting to him in all kinds of manner and sighed. Chancellor Shan's vocals sure are huge and he really could talk. It was very hard to imagine how such a rough man could be able to be so talkative. Qin Mu said, let us go to the direction of the borders. If Chancellor Shan can't find us, he will definitely head there. The Green Bull showed his true form and Qin Mu brought Hu Linger up the bull's back. Ling Yuxia also jumped up. The Green Bull took a step and sprinted towards the borders. Qin Mu looked at the girl beside him and asked, have your injuries healed? Ling Yuxia nodded her head, even the scar is gone. Look, I had a cut on my waist originally and it's now completely healed. She pulled up her clothes and revealed her waist while turning to the side, right here. Her skin was very exquisite and her waist was also very white. She probably hadn't tanned by the sun before. Qin Mu's skin was originally darker as he frequently swam naked in surging river during summer, exposing himself to the hot sun. Sometimes he even got pursued relentlessly by the huge fish monsters that were on his tail. Now that he had come to Imperial College, Qin Mu had no more chances to run around naked, so his skin had gradually lightened up. However, when compared to Ling Yuxia, Qin Mu was still slightly darker. Qin Mu stretched out a finger and touched the location of her wound. He could still feel a bump on the wound. Ling Yuxia felt ticklish and giggled. Qin Mu said, don't move. I'll help you dissolve the clotted blood, otherwise, there will always be a bump here. Ling Yuxia immediately stopped moving and held her shirt up. Qin Mu transformed his vital qi into green dragon vital qi, and threads of vital qi came out from the tip of his finger, carefully piercing into her skin to dissolve the clotted blood. Ling Yuxia only felt numb and ticklish, which made her giggle again. You are making me ticklish. There's a ticklish spot there. Qin Mu didn't raise his head and said, bear with it. It won't be ticklish in a moment and it would feel slightly painful. After a moment, Ling Yuxia felt a needle-piercing pain and immediately looked down. She only saw Qin Mu using his nature-fragrant silk handkerchief to wipe away the clotted blood that was flowing out. When the clotted blood had flowed out, there was no trace left on the skin. Ling Yuxia pulled down her shirt and blinked her eyes innocently. Divine Physician, there are still some wounds on my back, I don't know if they will leave scars. Hu Linger replied loud and clearly, I smeared the wounds on your back, and before I applied the medicine, I had already squeezed out the clotted blood for you. They won't leave any scars." Ling Yuxiu looked at her, and the little fox was smiling very sweetly, and very fake. HMPH, vixen. Both of them thought at the same time. Hu Linga blinked her eyes. "Sister Yuxiu, how old are you this year?" Ling Yuxiu's gaze flickered and asked, "How old are you?" "I'm 12. "I'm 16. "You're 1 year older than young master." Ling Yuxiu had a feeling that a little fox had pounced on her and gave her 2 stabs in her aching heart. This fox may be a little thing, but her moves were ruthless and unexpected, making her unable to defend herself. She had long noticed that this little fox harbored evil designs. Making her way onto Qin Mu's bed every night and acting as if she didn't know anything, she had a reserved manner and acted shamelessly cute. And now, this little hussy had already started to go on the offense. Ling Yuxiu may be unconstrained and looked like a big-hearted girl that was outspoken and straightforward unlike other girls, but she also had her own meticulous side. She smiled sweetly. "Sister Ling, the furs on your paws are really soft. Why didn't you try to turn them into human hands?" Hu Linga yawned and squinted her eyes. "Young master likes it this way." "Sister Ling, why haven't you shape-shifted?" "Young master likes it this way." "Look at your eyes, which are different from ours." "Young master likes it this way." Ling Yuxiu had lost the battle. This little fox had an impenetrable defense which struck back after blocking. It was like great thunderclap monastery's divine art, flowers in the mirror which could reflect other people's attacks back at them. Whom did this vixen learn from? Ling Yuxiu wasn't her opponent and was slightly angry. Hu Linga was proud of herself. In Rain Listening Pavilion, she had consulted the maidens of Rain Listening Pavilion regarding the techniques of this field.
Ling Yuxiu suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was actually being jealous of a little fox. She had truly lost the awe of the imperial family. She had the figure, and even though Qin Mu was slightly blind to say that she was slightly chubby, her appearance wasn't bad. No matter how incisive the little fox's moves were, she had not shapeshifted. Victory was already firmly grasped in her hands, and there was completely no need to be jealous of that vixen. Before they had yet to reach the borders, Chancellor Shan had finally caught up with them. When he saw Butcher had already left, this strong man couldn't help falling into a daze, crying loudly and cursing Heaven Knife at the same time. Qin Mu consoled him for a moment and said, "It's not that he doesn't miss you, he just dislikes your nagging, therefore, he went first. Actually, Grandpa Butcher cares about you very much. When he heard you were in danger, he was the first one to rush over. Stop crying, we're reaching the border station." How can Marshal Khan be seen sobbing like a little girl? Chancellor Shan wiped his tears and poured out his woes to him. He started telling Qin Mu about everything and anything. Ever since he was a child, he had to stand still as punishment for wetting his bed. Every single detail of his cultivation, helping Heaven Knife wash his undergarments, how Heaven Knife had brought him to steal duck soup from the neighboring village. Qin Mu looked at Ling Yuxiu pleadingly, and she shrugged her shoulders helplessly. Imperial College. The young patriarch packed his stuff silently into a small bundle, and threw his ribbon attached to the official seal on the floor. Hanging up his official seal on the door of the Hall of Supreme Learning, he took a last glance at Imperial College and gave a smile. Elder of Discipline walked over in quick steps and carried a bamboo basket that was not very big. In the bamboo basket were an umbrella and items like scrolls and books. "Let's go, there's no need to alarm the others," the young patriarch smiled. The two of them walked down the mountain without alarming anyone, and when they reached the bottom of the mountain, that dragon Chilean immediately stood up and wagged his tail. "My life is coming to an end and I can't bring you along anymore." The youth caressed the head of this dragon Chilean and shook his head. "If you follow me, you'll just be waiting for me to die of old age. Little friend, you're free. Catcher." The chain on the dragon's Chilean's neck opened up, and this dragon Chilean looked at him blankly. He shook his head and asked, "Old master, if I can't follow you, where can I go? You were originally living freely, so where can you not go?" The young patriarch waved his hand and looked at the imperial college, which he had built up personally, having a hint of reluctance in his eyes. He suddenly turned around and left, "Spending my last years here, yet I'm leaving here today. I do not wish to die of old age in Imperial College." The old and the young headed out of the capital city, and once they were out of the city, the young patriarch asked Elder of Discipline to stay back, as he walked towards that person by himself. "Dao friend." Imperial Preceptor greeted, "Are you going to leave just like this? Are you not going to ask for your dismissal from the Emperor?" The young patriarch smiled, "When I assumed the position effortlessly, I had not come for the Emperor, so why do I have to leave for the Emperor? I'm very happy that you had invited me here, and have come to send me off now." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor sighed ruefully, "Dao friend can already face death in the eyes. I wonder how many years do I have to cultivate to be able to reach the height of your frame of mind. Let me send you off." Both of them walked forward side by side, while Elder of Discipline followed not far behind. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, "When I knew you were leaving, I felt a big piece missing from my heart. No one knows me better than you in this world. Without you, I have one less person I can talk to." The young patriarch said, "You have great ambitions and your future is paved with difficulties. The path you are taking is filled with bumps and there's nothing I can teach you. You'll have to rely on yourself." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stopped. "Back then I wanted to acknowledge you as my teacher. Why didn't you accept me?" The young patriarch said calmly, "I knew you would be better than me and have higher attainments than me in the future, so I don't deserve to be your teacher, therefore, I can't take you in as my disciple. The things you have thought of were things I had never thought before. They are things I would never have accomplished in my entire lifetime. I have also learned many things from you, therefore, I can't be your teacher." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor took a stride forward and followed him. "I'm still slightly perplexed and exhausted lately. Say, is the path we are taking an orthodox one? In the eyes of the so-called orthodox path, the road we are going down on isn't the orthodox path." The young patriarch stopped and looked at him in the eyes. "We established primary schools, colleges, an imperial college to reform the sects, and gathered the teachings of numerous sects to teach scholars, to treat commoners and disciples of sects as equals. In their eyes, we are straying from the orthodox path and are committing an unforgivable sin. However, in our eyes, this is the orthodox path. Don't care what the others say, what's right is right. Don't let the furious barkings of others turn it wrong." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's body trembled slightly. "The things you want to do are too big, and the road ahead is filled with thistles and thorns. My life is coming to an end and I can't help you anymore, you'll have to rely on yourself." The young patriarch smiled slightly, "Go back." Eternal Peace clasped his hands together and bowed to the ground. "Thank you, Dao friend, for half of a lifetime of support." The young patriarch returned his greeting. "Since we are walking on the same path, we naturally have to support each other." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned around to leave, with his clothes fluttering in the wind, disappearing into the boundless sea of people in the capital city. The young patriarch rose and called Elder of Discipline over. "Let's go. It's time for the young cult master to ascend to power." At the borders of the Great Wall, Chancellor Shan's expression turned grim, as he brought Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu into the frontier stockade, feeling very displeased in his heart. When that barbarian general that was on duty saw them coming, his expression changed and he went forth. "Marshal Khan, the sacred ground has ordered not to let you out of the borders when we see you." Chancellor Shan had an icy gaze as he asked coldly, "Do you want to die?" That barbarian general felt a shiver down his spine and looked around. Chancellor Shan swept his gaze at all the generals around and asked coldly, "Do you all want to die?" That barbarian forced himself to shout, "Open the gates." The gates opened and Chancellor Shan rode the bull out of the borders. Qin Mu looked back and can't help crying out in surprise when he saw a barbarian youth on top of the city gate tower practicing his punches, which were so vigorous that wind was formed. That barbarian youth saw someone was peeping and immediately kept his stance to look down. "This youth is very strong and has an extremely strong foundation," Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration. That youth turned his gaze over and light shone from his eyes as he shouted, "Marshal Khan. My name is Pangong Tso, the son of the Prairie King. I will definitely defeat Marshal Khan in the future and become the overlord of the prairie." Chancellor Shan turned back and sized up that barbarian youth, praising him, "Great spirit, continue to train. You're a seedling with a good foundation. Show me your series of punches again." Pangong Tso executed another series of punches and Chancellor Shan told Qin Mu, "This child has great control over his fist skills and his power was much fiercer than other people. The aptitude of his body was very extraordinary, and he will definitely become a very capable person." Qin Mu nodded his head. The same moves, the same cultivation, yet the punches of some people would be stronger than others. This was their gifted talent that others could never get but envy. "I am impressed. As long as he doesn't die, he would definitely become a well-known figure on the prairie." As they walked toward Qingmen Pass, Pangong Tso's spirits rose after receiving Chancellor Shan's praise and trained even harder. Not long later, a ray of golden light flashed across the sky and a shaman king landed. With a grim face, he summoned the general on duty over and asked, "You have let the Marshal Khan out?" That general on duty braced himself and said, "Marshal Khan has immeasurable power, so how would I dare to block him? If we block him with force, I'm afraid there would be a disastrous amount of casualties in our border station, and it would be difficult for us to defend against Eternal Peace's army." That shaman king gave a cold snort, and was about to blow up, when he suddenly saw Pangong Tso who was practicing his punches on the city gate tower. He was surprised and delighted as he pointed towards Pangong Tso to ask, "Whose child is that?" "The young son of our barbarian Di Empire's Supreme Khan, Prince Pangong Tso." That shaman king gave a smile and reached out to grab him from afar. Pangong Tso's body flew over uncontrollably and landed in front of him. "Great aptitude, this is the extraordinary constitution that Grand Shaman is looking for." That shaman king sized him up and gave a satisfied expression, "The sacred child of reincarnation, which Grand Shaman ordered us to find has finally been found by me. Pangong Tso, follow me." The general on duty was startled and wanted to stop him, but that shaman king had already turned into a ray of golden light and brought Pangong Tso away. When he brought Pangong Tso back to Roland's golden palace, he sent this little prince to Grand Shaman. Grand Shaman also couldn't help being surprised and delighted. He immediately brought Pangong Tso to the sacred hall and bowed, "Grandmaster, the sacred child of reincarnation is found. He has the same constitution as Grandmaster. He is a rare talent that could only be found once every few hundred years on the prairie. Grandmaster can reincarnate now." A mournful laugh came from the shrine, and suddenly a bony monster flew out. With his head below and legs above, he stuck himself to Pangong Tso head to head. A world-shaking boom sounded out in Pangong Tso's mind and his soul was obliterated. Essences continuously surged forth from that monster's body into Pangong Tso's body. At the same time, that Grandmaster's soul was also shifting and planting itself into Pangong Tso's body. "Disciple, when I reincarnate, the one that should die doesn't die and the one that should live doesn't live. This alters fate and defies the natural order, so the messenger of death will be coming to capture my soul. Set up the formation properly to block the messenger of death." Grand Shaman immediately went forward and took out the shrines to place them around Pangong Tso. On the shrines were the skeletons from the past 17 lifetimes, which were left behind by the Grandmaster, and refined into magical artifacts. Suddenly, the space trembled as a chill wind blew over from another space and time. The fire in this sacred hall immediately dimmed as a small boat slowly floated over from another space and time. That was a dark world, and the only source of light seemed to be from the green lamp hanging on the bow of the small boat. The green lamp was dim, and there was an elder sitting under it and folding paper boats and paper humans. The boat slowly floated towards the sacred hall. Grand Shaman was extremely anxious, and immediately poured all of his magic powers into the shrines. In the shrines, that 17 golden skeletons seemed to have come to life, and stood in a line between the entrance of the other world and their actual world. The elder sitting on the boat was surrounded by boundless darkness, and looking from his angle, other than his lamp, which was lighted up in his world, the only other light was from the entrance to the other world, and that entrance was currently blocked by 17 skeletons. He raised his hand, and the paper humans and paper horses seemed to come alive, as the paper humans rode on the paper horses, which sprinted towards the entrance blocked by the golden skeletons. Meanwhile, the paper humans on the horsebacks were swinging their paper knives and paper swords. They opened their mouths and seemed to be shouting ferociously, but no sound came out. The 17 skeletons moved together at once and engaged in a scuffle with the paper humans and paper horses, which had come rushing over. These 17 golden skeletons formed a formation, which had immense power, and allowed the formation to unleash a might that rivaled the gods. However, the power from the other world was abnormally terrifying. When the paper knives and paper swords came slashing down, even the golden skeletons of the Grandmaster couldn't defend against them. A knife could easily sever a bone, and a sword could easily stab through their skulls. Grand Shaman controlled the 17 golden skeletons, and held on desperately to hold off the attacks of the paper humans and paper horses. Meanwhile, the Grandmaster sped up his reincarnation, yet he saw the small boat from the other world getting closer and closer. The elder on the boat had already picked up the lantern and stood up. Sweat broke out across Grand Shaman's forehead, as he saw the small boat had already floated at the way over, and was about to cross over from the other world to their actual world. Meanwhile, the elder holding the lamp had stretched his hand out as though he wanted to stretch his hand out from the other world to pull the reincarnating Grandmaster to that world. Suddenly, Grandmaster's body turned stiff, and he dropped down from mid-air, without a breath remaining, while Pangong so opened up his sparkling black eyes. Just as his eyes opened up, the connection between the two worlds crumbled. The paper humans and paper horses incinerated by themselves and turned into ashes in an instant. Meanwhile, the hand that had stretched out from the other world had gradually pulled back and vanished. In the sacred hall, the fire suddenly brightened again, and the dimness earlier had disappeared without a trace. Pangong so let out a sigh of relief and smiled. "I've finally succeeded." "Congratulations, Grandmaster." Grand Shaman bowed. Pangong so waved his hand and Grand Shaman retreated. Closing the door to the hall, he let out a sigh. If not for Grandmaster's old age and weak body, how would he let Heaven Knife slaughter his way up? Now that Grandmaster had reincarnated, he could finally live through another lifetime. This way, there would be no need to worry about Eternal Peace Empire, and Heaven Knife wouldn't be a problem as well. In Qingmen Pass, Qin Mu threw 2 jade bottles to Chancellor Shan, before going off to buy some spirit herbs to refine pills. "Young Master, Patriarch is looking for Young Master." Qin Mu finished grabbing his herbs, and that shop assistant of the medical store said, "Young Master, please leave the pass as soon as possible and head towards Harmony Prefecture." Qin Mu was slightly stunned and nodded his head. He returned to the inn and refined out a cauldron of spirit pills to heal injuries for Chancellor Shan. He called Hulinger over and left the border without a word, heading towards Harmony Prefecture. Ling Yuxiu was currently bathing, and when she was done, Qin Mu had disappeared without a trace. She couldn't help being surprised and immediately went to ask Chancellor Shan. Chancellor Shan also didn't know when Qin Mu had left and told her after some thinking, "Princess, there's no need to worry. The fox isn't here, as well, so this means that junior brother wasn't kidnapped and has left with the fox." Ling Yuxiu was slightly disappointed. Qin Mu did not tell her a thing and left quietly this time. Was there a need to be so mysterious? What could he not say? Chancellor Shan consumed the spirit pills and rose. "Princess, let us return to Imperial College. Calculating the time we have been out, Grand Chancellor should be resigning soon. The new Grand Chancellor should be assuming position soon too. Let us return earlier. Grand Chancellor has always been looking after me, I must see him off at least." Ling Yuxiu understood. Meanwhile, at this moment, Qin Mu had brought Hu Linga forward and they got closer to Harmony Prefecture. On their journey, there were turmoil and chaos of war everywhere. There would be sects announcing the emperor had gone down the wrong path and mistakenly allowed the treacherous imperial preceptor to bring a great turmoil to the whole world. Therefore, the sects revolted and wanted to purge the wrong in the name of justice. When he came to Luo City, which was beside Harmony Prefecture, there were battles everywhere in Luo City. The people had no way to make a living and the armies were quelling the rebellions everywhere. However, it was like they were trying to stop water from boiling, having not much use. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had let these flames burned too furiously. Most of the officials that formed Eternal Peace Empire's council were experts from numerous sects, and now that these sects had rebelled, these officials had rebelled together. The foundation of the empire had shaken, and it was already very difficult to suppress the revolt. What method does Imperial Preceptor have to pacify the chaos in the world? Qin Mu was bewildered. If it continues this way, I'm afraid all of the sects in this world will revolt. When that time comes, even if Eternal Peace Empire is able to pacify the rebellion, it would suffer a huge loss in power. This was something Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would definitely not be willing to see. If Eternal Peace Empire suffered a huge loss in power, how could he pacify the other countries around Eternal Peace Empire, and how could he occupy great ruins to attain an achievement of a lifetime? In the border of Luo City, Qin Mu was just a passerby, and he met over 10 groups of bandits attacking him. Some of the bandits were unsettled divine arts practitioners, while some were the officials of Luo City, who had turned into bandits to occupy the hills to act as lords. He relied on his fast speed and executed cripples' heavenly pilfering leg skill. When he couldn't defeat them, therefore, he was pretty safe. If Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor is able to pacify this rebellion and subdue, or eliminate all of the Empire's opposing forces, Eternal Peace Empire would be fully united, and that would be extremely terrifying. Qin Mu couldn't help exclaiming in admiration at what he saw on the way. There were already countless of divine arts practitioners in just Luo City, and one could imagine just how many divine arts practitioners there were in the Empire. Now Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was unable to use these powers, but once the rebel forces were eliminated or subdued, there won't be a decrease in Eternal Peace Empire's strength as a whole, and there would be a great increase instead. Finally, he came to Harmony Prefecture, and it was different from Luo City. Harmony Prefecture looked to be in peace and prosperity while the citizens were living in peace and worked happily. Qin Mu passed by the fields and saw a few martial arts practitioners executing spells, turning the wind into wind blades to harvest the crops for the farmers. Qin Mu stopped to take a look, and saw those few martial arts practitioners cultivated spells from Heavenly Devil Cult. They controlled the wind to help a few families finish harvesting their crops, and went to the families to settle the bill afterward. One of the girls said, "Don't dry your rice crops today. There would be rain later in the evening." Those few families gave their thanks repeatedly. These few practitioners saw Qin Mu standing over at the side of the field and were feeling peculiar. That girl came forward and stopped not far away from Qin Mu before greeting, "Senior brother, what's the matter? Qin Mu smiled warmly and asked, are you from the Wind Hall? That girl was astonished and didn't dare to answer him. Qin Mu smiled. I had seen the spell you had used earlier was spring wind traveling close to the ground, therefore I asked. Was Wind Hall Master the one that taught you this move? That girl hesitated for a moment and said, it's Wind Hall Master Lei Jingyin. Qin Mu asked curiously, Wind Hall Master didn't teach you this move completely? Other martial arts practitioners came forward and a youth shook their head. Wind Hall Master only taught us a few moves once in a while. He would normally teach once and not anymore, therefore, we had not learned them completely. Qin Mu circulated his vital qi, and turned it into green dragon vital qi while smiling. I just have the time, let me teach you. Take a look. He executed his green dragon vital qi beside the field and exhibited spring wind traveling close to the ground, and they saw wind blades that were like curved knives slithering in the field like snakes. With 100 wind blades close to the ground, they sprinted towards the legs of the enemies. This move isn't merely just to have blades sticking close to the ground. You can also do it this way. Qin Mu suddenly tapped his feet on the ground and jumped up. The tips of his feet then landed on the rapidly whirling wind blade and rushed forward while being carried by the wind blade. He stood on the wind blade and executed spells at the same time as he attacked. Hundreds of wind blades whooshed forward and covered a radius of 20 yards as they sliced forward. Even though spring wind traveling close to the ground was an ordinary spell, its power wasn't small. On the contrary, with a move like this, the power of great educational heavenly devil scriptures could be seen from the different ways of utilizing the move. Qin Mu landed on the ground and dispersed the spells. The few youths were surprised and delighted. Wind Hall Master had never taught us this kind of move by stepping on the wind blade. They immediately consulted him, and Qin Mu sat down beside the field to answer all their queries. He explained the marvel of the circulation of this spell, and how to control the magic power finely. There are still some variations to this move and the wind blade doesn't necessarily need to stick close to the ground. Qin Mu once again executed spring wind traveling close to the ground and suddenly trembled his fingers. The wind blades turned vertical and attacked upwards. The path of spells is actually interlinked with sword skills and battle techniques. Even though spring wind traveling close to the ground is a spell, it can also transform into sword techniques or battle techniques. He suddenly took out a knife pellet and gave it a gentle tremble. The curved knives flew out from the knife pellet and executed spring wind traveling close to the ground as well. Even though the variation of the move couldn't be compared to spell, its power was increased several times. Qin Mu wielded two curved knives and the knife lights suddenly expanded. His hands moved up and down and the knife lights traveled forward close to the ground. The move he had executed was actually spring wind traveling close to the ground as well, and the power was even stronger than the knife pellet by a few times. Qin Mu retracted his knives and the curved knives came flying back into the knife pellet one after another. Turning his head back, the few youths were stunned from the sight. Qin Mu gave a smile and asked, "Have you understood?" A girl muttered, "How can a spell turn into a knife skill, into a battle technique? Even Hall Master Lei can't execute it." Qin Mu guided patiently, "Who set the rule that spell must only be used as a spell? Why can't it be used as knife skill? And using it as a battle technique is also letting nature take its course. When you cultivate spells, there's no need for you to keep to the old-fashioned ways and be constrained to other people's experience." The few youths were deep in thoughts. Qin Mu explained the essence of this skill for a few more times, and when they had learned it completely, he asked, "Don't you go to school? I see you are still young, so why aren't you seeking knowledge in primary school?" A youth replied sadly, "Poor. Where do you have the money to attend school? We can only earn some money during the busy farming season. Sacred cult taught us spells, sword skills and battle techniques to let us earn a living and not starve to death. I see. Qin Mu seemed to think of something when a familiar voice suddenly came over. You taught well and they learned well. Qin Mu immediately turned back and saw the person who was talking. He immediately greeted, Patriarch. Elder of Discipline. When have you arrived? He didn't know when the young patriarch appeared in the distance, an elder of discipline was following behind him. Elder of Discipline smiled, we've been here for a while. We passed by here and saw you teaching them spells, so we stood and listened at the side without interrupting. The young patriarch praised, now I feel passing great educational heavenly devil scriptures to you was an incomparably right choice. It's already considered remarkable for others who cultivate it to understand great educational heavenly devil scripture. They could at most develop 1 or 2 uses from a spell, yet you could think of so many different uses. Good, very good. Qin Mu was bewildered. Shouldn't spells be used this way? The young patriarch smiled, they should be. It's just that the previous cult masters were too dumb and didn't think of these kinds of usages. Let us go. Qin Mu acknowledged and brought Hulinga to follow them to Harmony Prefecture City. Aya, I've forgotten to ask who was he. A girl suddenly cried out. Those few youths looked at Qin Mu and the rest walking further and further away. A youth muttered, just now he called one young patriarch and the old man elder of discipline, so who could he be? His knowledge is even higher than Hall Master Lei. He must be an important figure in our sacred cult. On the way, Qin Mu saw some more heavenly devil cult's disciples using spells to dig canals, and there are also some who were using spells to plow the ground, using spells to fly up the tree to pluck fruits. However, these disciples were not proficient in their spells and most of them had not learned the spells completely. This time Qin Mu didn't stop to impart the complete spells to these heavenly devil cult's disciples. There were too many heavenly devil cult's disciples spread throughout the whole world. It was completely impossible for him to teach them all by himself, which would take him God knows how many years. There are more disciples of our sacred cult in Harmony Prefecture. The young patriarch smiled and asked, what opinion do you have looking at this situation? Patriarch assisted Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor to found Imperial colleges, and primary schools, yet our sacred cult's disciples have no place to learn. Patriarch placed the world in your mind, yet you forgot about our sacred cult. Qin Mu shook his head and said, Patriarch should establish primary schools, colleges, an imperial college in our cult so that the disciples of our cult will not fall behind the times. The young patriarch smiled, this is what the sacred cult master has to do and not what the patriarch has to do. Young cult master, this will be your responsibility from now on. Qin Mu stared blankly and asked, why didn't cult master Li do it 40 years ago? Cult master Li lost himself to female charms and was attracted by cult mistress, so how would his eyes still have the people of the world? Qin Mu was speechless. Granny Sai was dragged into this again. Back then Li Tianxing was charmed head of heels for Granny Sai, and missed the reform, which received worldwide attention. As a comparison, it wasn't good for Dao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery to conform to his reform. Even though they were the sacred grounds of the righteous path and Buddhism path, their method was that each master took in a few disciples and the master could only teach these few disciples. Whereas it was different for Heavenly Devil Cult. Heavenly Devil Cult's method was Hall Master Responsibility System. Even though the Hall Masters were strong practitioners, they weren't in charge of taking in disciples and only impart their techniques and divine arts once in a while. Heavenly Devil Cult could totally set up a few primary schools and colleges within the cult, and as for Imperial College. For Imperial College, we can just send them to learn from Imperial College. Qin Mu calculated, pick out outstanding disciples from our cult, and let them attend Imperial College's examination, and let Imperial College help us groom our disciples. In this way, Heavenly Saint cult would prosper even if we don't want to. The young patriarch took a look at him and sighed, "Why couldn't you be born 40 years earlier?" He brought Qin Mu into the city, and the citizens busied to and fro like threads weaving by each other. Qin Mu couldn't help being bewildered. Could the headquarters of our Heavenly Saint cult be situated in the city? Isn't this too eye-catching? The young patriarch took him to the city lord's manor, and when they got there, they didn't even inform anyone and just entered the manor. In the manor, there were already many higher-ups of Heavenly Devil cult gathered. There were the hall masters, cult protector elders, supervisors, guardians, and cult heavenly kings. When people saw the young patriarch and Qin Mu, they all stood up to greet. Qin Mu returned their greeting and the young patriarch gently nodded his head before asking, "Is everyone here?" A cult protector elder said, "Cult mistress and saintess aren't here yet. Heavenly King Qian of the cult Heavenly Kings isn't here yet as well." The young patriarch nodded his head, "In that case, let us wait a while more." Not long after, a sweet and alluring voice sounded out, "Are Mua and patriarch here?" When Qin Mu heard this voice, he felt his blood rushing to his head. All the other hallmasters, elders had their faces turned red with anticipation, as if they had seen their perfect dream partner when they heard the voice. The young patriarch's heart also turned slightly frisky, and his expression changed. He shouted, "Sai Yuyu, be a little solemn." Granny Sai's voice then came from outside, "How boring." The young patriarch flew out of the door and rushed out. His voice sounded out, "Who let you reveal your true appearance? If you reveal your true appearance, you'll turn the whole ceremony into a great mess. Of course you will have to come in your ugly state. The child you raise is becoming the cult master. Do you want him to be charmed by you? That's better. Go in." Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief along with everyone in the city lord's manor. Cold sweat broke out on the foreheads of the few white-haired elders and cult heavenly kings as they composed themselves. Outside the door, the young patriarch and Granny Sai walked in. The old woman was still slightly unhappy and looked around. When she saw Qin Mu, she gave off a smile. "Granny." Qin Mu immediately went forward and pulled onto Granny Sai's hand. He snickered softly, "Granny, I know you were in Imperial College, you didn't even change your name." Granny Sai was bewildered. "I haven't gone to Imperial College. I have only observed you from afar. Furthermore, there was Patriarch in Imperial College, so I wasn't worried about your safety at all." Qin Mu smiled and said, "Granny is still going to act. You have already been seen through by me, your Imperial College's Sai. Saintess has arrived." A resounding voice suddenly sounded out. Qin Mu was about to say Sai Yuxiong's name, when he suddenly saw Sai Yunxiang walking in from the door. Granny Sai's voice then sounded beside his ear, "Saintess is even the classmate of Cult Master, you two entered Imperial College at the same time." This video will end here.